took me a few days to gather my thoughts and post something about the fires in Los Angeles. And part of that is that I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, around the kind of loss that we are seeing here. And if you're not from LA or you don't know much about Southern California, it might be difficult for you to imagine the devastation. 5,000 homes have been lost, and some of those homes belonged to dear friends of mine. And I've been reflecting on it. And when you're not from a place and you move somewhere and you anchor yourself in, your friends become your family. And for me, especially having times in my life where family didn't accept me for being a lesbian, those friendship relationships were really meaningful. And so those houses came to be houses where I spent a lot of time and people I spent a lot of time with. And so the losses they have a ripple effect. Yes, they're affecting the people directly. And I'm not even comparing what they went through with what all of us bystanders are going through. What I'm saying is that this is like a wipeout for so many of us. And those of us who are on the periphery watching, we have the same weather conditions. And so we are all operating under this anxious position of being ready to run at a moment's notice. Our bags are packed. We've got evacuation prepper things. And so there's this nervous energy that you can feel because the wind is intense and the weather conditions are a little ominous in considering everything that's happening. I want to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the astrology of this, but I'm hesitant, always hesitant, when something tragic happens to go right into the astrology. So I want to first of all just say that any of my perspective around the astrology has to do with compassion for anyone who has been affected by the fires. And I want to offer some hope for those who are really going through, like I said, a wipeout right now of everything that they've known, a complete and total reset. So we're going to talk about that in just a second and help you to make some meaning out of this. Because I think when tragic things happen, that's what we want. We want to find something meaningful to hold on to. And so I want to talk about that. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to talk about this from a perspective of someone who is an elected official in my community. And I've heard a lot of people immediately going into what certain elected leaders did wrong or didn't do right. And I think before we do a deep dive and answer all of those questions and really pick it apart and see what could have been done different and how can we learn from this, especially those of us in peripheral communities who are watching this and saying, okay, these are some things that we can do differently. I think that what we need now more than anything, and especially for the people who have lost everything and the people who are suffering the most, I think we really need to approach this from a perspective of let's all come together. Let's show compassion. Let's rally the way that we do when any tragic thing happens. The way we did after 9/11, the way we did after Asheville, the way we do after hurricanes and floods and fires. The more we come together, the more we strengthen the communities that we're in. It's not just about helping other people that you might never meet. What it's about is it's about giving us a perspective. It's about bringing us into our hearts, because nothing brings us into our hearts more than witnessing the suffering of others. Compassion, if you break it down, etymologically speaking, compassion means suffering with, and suffering really means we're feeling big feelings in that context. So when we have compassion for others, we ultimately strengthen our own muscles, our heart muscles, and we're able to love more deeply. We're able to care more deeply. We make the world a better place. We raise the vibration of the planet. And it's unfortunate that we have not evolved to a point where we can raise the vibration of the planet just through our positive energy. We have to go through these cycles. And what we know is that everything between now and 2026 is being reset. It is a cosmic reset, a reboot. And there's a lot of that's happening this week in January. So from January 10th to January 16th, we have a series of really powerful transits. And they're fiery transits, they're intense transits, and they're passionate transits. When the North Node reaches that 0-degree Aries point, it is a reset for all of us. When we are given our call to adventure from the universe, when we are given that next mission that we are here to experience and to move through. And so we're all on some level affected by what's happening right now. The chart for Los Angeles, I have 3 different charts, astrological charts for LA. 1, the county, and 2, the city. And these are all circling around. One is September 4th, 1781. And that's the one that I like to use because there are so many things that stand out to me about these fires. Then I also have one for LA County, which is February 18th, 1850. And I put around 2 p.m. for that one because I went back and I read the archives and the journals of the assembly. And it looks like a lot of their votes happened in the afternoon. And there were some times of 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock that were mentioned. So I put just roughly 2 o'clock, even though that's not an exact time. And then we also have April 4th, 1850. And we don't have an exact time for that. That was the official incorporation date. I put around 9 a.m. for that one. You could use a noon time, which is pretty standard of what people do. And I have 3 different charts for LA. And what we see is we see a lot of Aries influence. And Aries is that pioneering, inspiring, visionary, go get 'em kind of influence. And if you think about LA is where a lot of people move to pursue their dreams, so it's got that pioneering spirit. It is a place where dreams are born. It's a place where stories are told. It's actually a place where many of the stories that influence culture and shape the evolution of the world are born. Think of LA as being like this little magic wand. The whole city is like a magic wand. And I'm not saying we're the only one. I know there are so many different cities that are also hubs for culture. But in terms of the film industry, LA is where a lot of storytellers are, and those stories get out into the world. They disseminate into the world. And so real cultural change starts here. And California itself is a state that is numerologically a 5. And so it is a state that is all about change through storytelling. And a lot of things that happen in California were sometimes considered a little out there or a little strange, but the seeds that are planted in California bear fruit that ripples out into the world. When we're talking about this nodal reset and thinking about all of this happening in LA, I think this is indicative of the whole new paradigm that is opening up for us as Neptune and Saturn get ready to meet up in 0 degrees Aries in February of 2026. LA, we had the strikes in the industry, not just the writer's strike, but the Actors Guild, the Directors Guild. We had all of the strikes here. That was a reset in many ways of the film industry. And now we have the fires, and that is a reset of the industry, of the city, and of the state, really. There's a lot of change that's going to come from this, and we don't know what it's going to look like yet because it's going to evolve over the next. It will probably take about 2 years or 3 years for us to see the results of the building efforts. And I'm personally looking forward to seeing the innovation that happens as a result of this, and that coincides with the Olympics happening in LA in 2028. And so I have a lot of hope for where we are moving, even as I have grief for all that we have lost. And so if you're there and you have been affected by this, or if you are sitting in your LA apartment or house and you are breathing the smoke with your bags packed, ready to go at a moment's notice, I want to let you know that there is hope, that we are on the precipice of the change that's going to take place in the world. We are the change that we want to see in the world. And the way that we come together for this is all about that movement. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the astrology of this time. So I'm going to show some charts. It's one big conversation in astrology right now of which chart do we use for LA. And so I have the first chart I'm going to show is the September 4th, 1781 chart. And this happened at the time that's listed on astrothema.com is 9:18 a.m. This is not verified, but I think it aligns with the astrology for this moment because we have Pluto at 1 degree, transiting Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, conjunct the fourth house, which is the center of the home. It is the grounding of the city. And so we have Pluto coming in to completely rebuild. The fires also happened when the sun was about 17 degrees of Capricorn. Mars is at 17 Capricorn in the LA chart. And so here we have the sun activating Mars, which is fire, which is movement, which is action, which is hot. And LA's Mars is right next to Eris, which is a dwarf planet that relates to discord for progressive change. So we can see here that LA is going to be a change agent, leading conversations around climate in a more dramatic way, because this is ultimately a climate change problem. Even though there are conversations around the local leadership and state leadership, I'm going to address that in just a second. Even though there are lots of conversations about what we could have done differently or what could have happened differently, this is a climate change issue. And so many of us are going to be climate nomads. We're going to have to be thinking about infrastructure, about insurance, about FEMA funding. We're going to have to be thinking about things in a whole new way related to climate change. And this is something that in many of my policy meetings, these are things that we are talking about. And many of us are aware of the real need. In fact, that is one of the reasons why I decided to run for city council and to get involved, is because I wanted to be on the front lines with climate and not feeling like I'm taking a backseat. And we have done some really progressive climate action measures here in our community, and I'm so proud of them. In the state too. And Biden's infrastructure package made it possible for cities to have vital infrastructure that relates to climate mitigation, moving away from fossil fuels. So the presidential administration has not gotten enough credit for what they've done to put money directly into our communities. And so I just give Biden a great big shout out, because it has made a huge difference here and for some of the agencies that I serve for. This is going to be a fast track to addressing the effects of climate change, to moving away from fossil fuels, to really getting a sense what kinds of needs we're going to have as the temperatures continue to rise, as weather conditions continue to get more extreme. Now, going back to the chart, the other thing I wanted to mention is that Los Angeles, LA, was, because it has the Venus and Neptune and the north and south nodes, and it has so many points right there on that Aries Libra axis line. And that's the axis line where the eclipses have happened for the last 18 months. And anytime you have planets or chart points on at near degrees where eclipses happen, there is change that is catalyzed in such a fast and unpredictable. You know that whatever happens is a part of the community's destiny, a part of the individuals who live there, their destiny. Like, this is a nodal thing. The purpose for LA is getting a wake-up call. And so we had eclipses in April. We had eclipses in September and October, and the previous falls, October, we had eclipses along that axis line that hit these very specific points in the chart, including the moon, including Neptune, including Venus. And usually the effects of eclipses are felt between 4 to 6 months after an eclipse. And so this is a result of the eclipses that were happening in September 17th and October 2nd. And that go back to April of 2024. So big things happening here. Now I want to point out the chart for Los Angeles County, because this was really a county-wide issue. If you look at Los Angeles County on the map, you see all fires in different places throughout the county. And so this goes beyond Mayor Karen Bass and the LA City Council. This really speaks to the Board of Supervisors. And if you want to do any kind of deep dive, start going into those policies and those votes that have taken place over the last 2 years, 2 to 6 years, to see where there are issues there. But here we have the chart for LA County, February 18th, 1850. I went back and I read the Journal of Archives, and I didn't see a specific time for the vote. And in fact, I saw more activity happening around the 20th. But this is the chart that's listed for the county on the county's website. And so this is the chart I'm using. And what we have here is we don't have an exact time. But interestingly, what we have here is Uranus, which is the planet, it's like the planetary change agent. We have Uranus standing at the bendings of the nodes, and that north node in Leo, which is a fire sign. Fire is really prominent here. We also have transiting Eris, has been right at 24 degrees for quite some time now, but right on top of LA's Eris. And so you have here, again, signatures that relate to structural changes, that relate to that cosmic reset that we've been talking about. And Saturn, the LA County Saturn, is at 5 degrees Aries. It's right there in the mix of, it was in the line of the eclipses. And so here we have Saturn being the rules, the laws, the structure, being actually the holding leaders accountable. And so here you have the very Saturnian, we have to rebuild. And we've got a lot of influence from Aquarius here too. And so Pluto's going to be making its way through that sign over the next 20 years, completely revitalizing the city, but not yet. It's like things have to be broken down to the studs in order for them to be rebuilt. Now, there's one more chart that I wanted to show, and that is the chart for the incorporation date, and that is April 4th, 1850. And here you also have a lot of Aries influence, all of those eclipses that we just talked about, the North Node at 0 degrees Aries moving over the Mercury. So you have just another reflection of LA is the change agent. It's the birthplace of so many movements in our world. And if we're going to have a total and complete cosmic reboot with the North Node moving to 0 degrees Aries, with Neptune and Saturn both moving to 0 degrees Aries, if we're moving into this really intense fire and air sign period, which we are next year and the year after, and a little bit into this year, then everything has to change. We can't just keep doing life the way that we've been doing it. Here you have the opportunity for that change to start in the place where you have creative, innovative people putting incredible work out into the world that sparks the cultural revolutions and the paradigm shifts that we see. I know this give us solace, especially for those who are suffering so greatly, but it does help to offer a little glimmer of hope and help us to cull together some meaning at a time when everything feels incomprehensible. It's so big that it's hard to wrap your head around it. Now, on a totally separate note, I am going to be gathering donations. I'm going to put together an Amazon wish list for the people I know who've lost things, who've lost their homes. And I will be posting links to that underneath the show notes here and posting them on my Instagram and Facebook. And if you feel moved to donate or to get involved, please do. The needs are great and they're wide-reaching. Anything you can do to show your love and to be a part of the swell of compassion that we need to heal right now, please do. And if you are a praying person, whatever intentions you can send, please, between now and January 16th, we've got a lot of Mars, we've got a lot of fire, and we've got a lot of wind here forecasted for Southern California. So pray for calm winds, pray for stillness, pray for embers to be cleared, and pray for our firefighters on the ground, our elected leaders, anyone who is attending to these disasters. Send your prayers and your love and your support, and even like your notes of congratulations. Those kinds of things help. They make a very big difference, and your kindness has a ripple effect. So I will be back posting more in the coming days, but I just wanted to speak about this right now because it's fresh on my mind. All right, we're going to get through this. We're going to rebuild.